It is Monday, May 25th. I'm Sam Seder.
And I'm Lucie Steiner. Which one of these stories will you be talking about today?
Coronavirus deaths in the U.S. are approaching 100,000 as experts warn of a second wave sweeping the country. And the president responds by banning travel from Brazil and pretty much nothing else. Meanwhile, in Florida, a federal judge delivered a massive victory for voting rights, ruling a draconian racist law that forced felons to pay fines in order to vote unconstitutional. And lastly, Joe Biden went on The Breakfast Club, a hugely popular nationally syndicated radio program, and you'll never guess what happens next. Spoilers, he said something cartoonishly stupid and racist. In that respect, he's truly a match for Trump.
You're listening to Majority.fm's AM Quickie, and these are the stories you need to know.
The U.S. is about to reach a grim milestone in the coronavirus pandemic, 100,000 deaths. The number is staggering in its own right, especially as it didn't have to be this way. Trump's latest action on Saturday was to ban travel from Brazil, citing the fact that it had already the third highest number of cases in the world and ignoring the fact that the U.S. is already number one in the world. The president then spent the rest of the weekend playing golf and throwing tantrums on Twitter. As usual, he was rambling about Obamagate, mail-in ballots, and Hillary Clinton. Let's take a look at the few words he's said lately that matter. Trump insisted last Thursday that he won't shut the country down again, even though experts worry that we're going to see a second wave of the virus, or just a perpetual continuation of the first wave as states start to reopen. Lockdown orders are usually the purview of state governors, of course, but what Trump is signaling here is that he'll likely give flack to any governor who tries to crack down on the virus if things start to get out of hand. And we're already seeing some distressing trends across the country. The Washington Post reports that the disease is already starting to surge in rural areas, even as it slowly wanes in major metropolitan areas like New York City. We're still at the beginning of a long fight, and the president and his ilk are doing everything they can to pretend they've already won. On Sunday, a federal judge resoundingly struck down one of Florida's worst voting laws and single-handedly paved the way for thousands of felons to reclaim their right to vote. The fact that many federal prisoners, people who are literally wards of the state, cannot vote is a peculiar injustice in American society. But even those states that allow felons to reclaim their right to vote often impose restrictions on or further punishments on citizens after they get out. In 2018, Republicans in Florida passed a restriction that said felons have to pay any and all court fees or fines they're responsible for to get back their right to vote. Judge Robert L. Hinkle, who presides over District Court in Tallahassee, wrote that imposing this condition creates, quote, a tax by any other name on these citizens' right to vote. The implications of this are huge. The 2018 fine rule was itself an attempt by Florida Republicans to keep felons from voting, even after the state gave them back their right to vote through a public referendum that added an amendment to the Constitution that year. This was a sneaky way to do it, as few voters knew that every felon gets slapped with hundreds of dollars in fines and fees as their case goes through the courts. But fortunately, Judge Hinkle saw through the obvious injustice at play here. Now thousands of prospective voters may be back on the rolls and likely not very predisposed to vote for the party that stripped them of their right to vote in the first place.
Majority.fm's AM Quickie is fueled by JustCoffee.coop. Just Coffee is a worker-owned coffee roaster based in Madison, Wisconsin that has sponsored the Majority Report for nearly a decade. Check out their collection of fair trade roasts, including our own Majority Report blend. And regardless of what you order, receive 10% off your order when you use the code MAJORITY at checkout. And all shipping is free. That's coupon code MAJORITY at JustCoffee.coop.
And now let's check in the Joe Biden campaign. On Friday morning, Biden himself stopped by The Breakfast Club, a huge radio show hosted by MC Charlemagne the God that's considered a cultural touchstone for Black America. That's about all the context you need. If you haven't heard the quote, brace yourself. In the final minutes of the interview, Biden leaned forward and said, quote, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black. Now, he was joking, but this is, as you can imagine, not a great thing to say in any context. Biden had been forced to play defense for much of the 18-minute interview thanks to Charlemagne's confrontational questions about his atrocious record on busing, marijuana, and the 1994 crime bill. This is probably exactly why the Biden campaign tried to prevent the candidate from going on the show for so long. According to Charlemagne, they repeatedly tried to send a black surrogate on the show instead of Biden. Eventually, though, the campaign caved to pressure and sent the candidate himself. And this is what happened. It's almost like he may not be the perfect guy for the job. I went on Chris Hayes' program Friday night to discuss. For me, one of the biggest points was that Charlemagne followed up by saying, I just want something to bring back to my community to tell them what you're going to do. Joe Biden had less than a sufficient answer. We'll talk more about that tomorrow on the Majority Report.
And now for some quicker quickies.
Quicker Quickie.
The actress Lori Loughlin pled guilty on Friday in the obscene college admissions case, which hauled in several B and C-list celebrities and other various rich people on charges of wire and mail fraud for their roles in buying their children's way into prestigious colleges. It's not exactly justice for years of a discriminatory education system leaving behind millions of deserving children, but hey, it's a start. If murder hornets weren't enough to deal with, the CDC issued a warning on Sunday that the rat populations of major cities are becoming more and more aggressive, mostly to each other, as their usual steady supply of leftover restaurant food has been interrupted by the pandemic. Sounds funny and dystopian, but you know there's something truly gone wrong when even the rats are feeling the pain of a crisis. After a few months of pandemic-enforced peace, major street protests broke out in Hong Kong on Sunday as protesters lashing out against the authoritarian mainland government's new proposed security legislation, which would tighten its grip over the semi-autonomous region. Mitt Romney spends a lot of his time cosplaying as an honorable person, but new reports in Politico suggest that the Republican senator could be trying to slip a bill gutting Social Security benefits into the next coronavirus relief package. He can tut-tut Trump all he wants, but we all know what team he plays for in the end.
Quicker Quickie.
That's it for the Majority Report's AM Quickie today. The Majority Report is off today. We will be back live tomorrow. Have a happy Memorial Day.